human, well, let's say a human mistake, or it's just part of our nature. We make assumptions, we generalize it. That's really hard to overcome, but that's exactly what we have to change. And there's a tendency to disaggregate families. Government just bringing in one person rather than the entire family. And it's really hard, because if you're providing for your family, it's not as easy to just leave them behind and go and work and not knowing what's going to happen. So it is understandable that many people, they simply don't want to stay, or they don't adapt. In such conditions, really, who would? So maybe if you really need these people, because as you know, in terms of demographics, we have an aging population, baby boomers are retiring, our growth rate is decreasing. So I believe it was a study that said that by 2030 we're going to have 100% of population growth is going to be due to immigration. So
wow.
If you think about that, obviously you need to have a bigger effort on making the conditions for immigrants more favorable.
Exactly.
So that they stay, and so that they work for you, and so that they become Canadians proudly, and they can contribute to a workforce.
Thank you so much, Andrea Sanchez, to come to our studio to talk about your project.
My name is David Dick, and I am the news editor at the Peak, SFU's campus newspaper. This week in the Peak, Chartwell's contract has been renewed with some changes. Last week's Board of Governors meeting saw the approval of a 5-year contract renewal with Chartwell's, the primary food vendor on campus. The renewal will come with several changes that aim to improve the quality of food on campus. The biggest changes announced last week were the upcoming addition of a Starbucks, an overhaul of the dining hall meal card program, and the addition of an SFU food services manager. Food vendors will also be open on weekends and later on weekdays. The previous Chartwell's contract lasted 10 years, and according to Ancillary Services Executive Director Mark McLaughlin, 10 years of anger came out in the negotiations for the new contract. He told the Peak that food over the past few years has slipped on this campus, and they had to make sure they had Chartwell's commitment. The university did several extensive surveys leading up to the contract negotiations. According to McLaughlin, Starbucks was the #1 item that students and faculty wanted on campus. SFU researchers have developed a treatment for malaria. An international team of researchers, including an SFU scientist, has developed a new therapy that treats the critically damaging effects of malaria. Through anti-malarial drugs designed to prevent and treat the infectious disease do already exist, in reality they only solve part of the problem. Given on their own, anti-malarial drugs fail in about 1 of every 4 cases of severe malaria, mainly because patients were already suffering from advanced stages of the sickness by the time they were brought to a hospital for treatment. The research, led by Australia's Walter and Eliza Hall Institute of Medical Research, is also partially attributed to the Brinkman Laboratory at SFU. This discovery is an instance of targeting both the underlying problem as well as the serious symptoms caused by malaria. And SFU has commemorated its deceased grad student. A plaque commemorating the memory of Andrew T. Wade, an SFU graduate student who died last September, has been mounted outside of the Interactive Arts and Technology Labs on the Surrey campus. The plaque, which depicts Wade in front of the Taj Mahal, is fixed on a wall just steps away from the lab that Wade himself worked in. Despite being just 26 years old at the time of his death, Wade had already worked with Boeing to find ways to protect planes from bird strikes. His plaque states that his work led to 5 changes in Boeing aircraft and their pilot safety manual, as well as a full-time position with Boeing that would have begun in November of 2011. And finally, the Board of Governors has split the student representative position. Last week's Board of Governors meeting saw a motion passed that takes 2 student positions on the board and designates 1 for an undergraduate student and 1 to a graduate student. Previously, the 2 student representatives were elected regardless of whether or not they were graduates or undergraduates. Outgoing student representative Mark Fontaine spoke to the motion, raising concerns that there are approximately 5 times more undergraduate students than graduate students at SFU. Ultimately, however, Fontaine supported the motion, stating that it will guarantee there is a graduate student on the board, which historically has not been the case. According to election data, only 2 graduate students have served on the board since 2007. Elections for the Board of Governors are occurring currently online this week. There are 3 undergraduates and one graduate student in the running. My name is David Dick, and I am from The Peak, your SFU student newspaper.
Thank you so much, David Dick. And to the listeners out there, you're listening to CJSF 90.1 FM. On cable FM, we're at 89.3. We stream on the web at cjsf.ca. You can hear us on TELUS HD channel 3706. And we're broadcasting from Simon Fraser University in Burnaby, BC. Coming up now is Smitten by the Written.
Thanks for joining us here on CJSF 90.1 FM, 89.3 cable FM, as well as on TELUS HD channel 3706 and on the web at www.cjsf.ca. My name is KP Wee, and on today's Smitten by the Written program, we're pleased to present an interview I conducted with jazz guitarist, vocalist, composer, and songwriter Roger Chong from Toronto. Roger has released a pop and rock album titled In the Beginning, as well as 2 recent jazz albums titled Love Me One More Time and Send a Little Love. During the interview, Roger talks about a few interesting things about his latest album, Send a Little Love. Before we play the interview, here's a piece from that album, and the piece is titled Memories of Venice. Let's enjoy it, and then we'll get to the interview afterwards. Good afternoon. You're listening to CJSF 90.1 FM, 89.3 cable FM, and online at www.cjsf.ca. We're also on TELUS HD channel 3706 as well. It's a pleasure today to welcome Roger Chong to our program. Roger is a jazz guitarist, vocalist, composer, and songwriter. He's from the Toronto area, and he's got 3 albums out so far. The first one, appropriately titled In the Beginning, was released several years back, and it contains pop rock type of music. The last 2 albums that he's released, titled Love Me One More Time and Send a Little Love, are jazz albums, and that third album, Send a Little Love, was released a few weeks back. So we're pleased to have Roger Chong on our program today. So welcome, Roger. How are you today?
Good, KP. Thanks for having me. It's good to be on the show again.
Perfect. Yeah, because the last time we talked, you mentioned that you were going to be in the studio recording a new jazz album, and lo and behold, you do have that new album out. Again, it's titled Send a Little Love. That's fantastic. Maybe take us through the process. I understand that you had these songs written during the Christmas break in 2011.
Yes. So during the Christmas, I've already had plans to do another studio album. So during the Christmas break, I made myself sit down and write a bunch of songs. And last February, we did 2 dates in February, and we recorded them.
Yeah, so that's great. And it seems that your song composing has evolved over the last few years. I understand your first album, In the Beginning, as mentioned at the top, is more like a pop rock album, and there are quite a few love songs on there, featuring you on vocals. Now, your next 2 albums, Love Me One More Time, and this last one that we just released, Send a Little Love, are jazz CDs. So what are your comments on how you've evolved since your first album?
Right. Well, that first album was more of a collection of tunes that I've written during my years in university. And I guess, there's a huge difference between when I first got into university or when I graduated. So, it's sort of like a record of how I progressed as a musician. So when I released it, in the back of my mind, by that time I was already a jazz enthusiast, and I wanted to make a jazz album and involve more musicians as well. So that's why the second album was more of a jazz recording, and that's probably the route that I'm going to stay on for a little while.
I see. Now, getting back to your first album for a moment. Now, you mentioned that those are a collection of songs that perhaps you've written during your university days. Notice quite a few of them are kind of like love songs. Would it be fair to say that some of those are kind of like your own experiences, or how did you get the inspiration to write those lyrics?
Oh, it's so long ago. I'm trying to think back. Some of it might have been. I'm not sure. There are some songs that I think about, like you said, love songs about, trying to ask somebody out. I think maybe it was a song that was about that. So they might have come from personal experiences, but I don't. It's just so long ago. It's hard to remember the songs that are on the CD. I would probably say 1 or 2 of them are, but not all of them. And it was a very bluesy album as well. I had some instrumentals on there as well. I was under the influence of Eric Clapton a lot. And, Eric Clapton's a famous guitar player. He's also a very good songwriter and vocalist. So that was what I was trying to go for.
Okay, good stuff. Now, Roger, I think you kind of mentioned earlier that you're going to perhaps focus more on jazz moving forward. Now, I noticed that on your newest album, Send a Little Love, on this, it features you on vocals of 2 songs, Georgia on My Mind and Save Your Love for Me. Now, a couple of questions for you here. Now, first of all, what made you decide to be on vocals for this album instead of just being an album with strictly instrumentals?
Yeah, well, when we were performing last summer, promoting the last CD, I would speak in vocal tunes here or there during the gigs, and the audience seems to like it. And I guess it gets a nice little break from the instrumental tunes, and it's a little bit easier for the audience to relate to, right? So I thought it would be a good idea to involve a couple of vocal tunes on this new album.
And the second follow-up question to that would be why those 2 songs in particular, Georgia on My Mind and Save Your Love for Me?
Right, Georgia on My Mind has always been a favorite tune. Now that I've done it, I kind of regret it a little bit because, the Ray Charles version is so good and so famous that people tend to compare every version that's done afterward to Ray Charles' version. So, but initially I thought it was a nice song, and it felt nice to sing, so I wanted to do it. Same thing for "Save Your Love for Me" as well. I was listening to Boss Gag's latest jazz album and the version of it, and I liked it, so I picked it.
Okay. And you did mention just a moment ago about how people tend to compare, the version of Georgia on My Mind to, past versions. And I did read an article in Toronto Star recently that made that comparison. But I also read in the papers where someone wrote that you had the potential to become a triple threat as a composer, songwriter, and guitarist. I think it's a pretty big compliment. What are your thoughts on that particular comment?
Well, it's a nice compliment, and I'm honored to have somebody said that about me. I feel pretty good about my guitar playing and my composing skills. As a vocal, though, not so much. And I kind of mentioned this in another interview I did with a local radio station when they asked about the difference between my first and the second album. How come they were singing on the first and not on the second? And I remember answering that I felt I had my own voice as a guitarist. When I play the guitar, I feel like I sound like myself and not somebody else. Whereas as a singer, I haven't really found my own voice yet. I feel more of a hobby kind of thing for me in terms of singing right now.
Okay. But I guess in terms of jazz, you've kind of made a name for yourself a little bit, because I'm reading all sorts of compliments about you. And here's a compliment from a jazz musician, and I quote this: "Roger has found something that seems to be missing in the recording industry these days. That is sensitivity. As a guitarist, he has captured the moods of one of our most romantic instruments." Unquote.
Yeah, so from Archie Aline, one of the greatest drummer, a jazz drummer.
Correct.
Pretty much everybody.
And then how do you feel when you hear a comment like that from Archie?
Oh, definitely honored, humble at the same time that he would say something like that for me, somebody of his stature. So I was pretty glad that he was able to, say that about me.
Fantastic. Now, I've read some of the reviews for Send a Little Love, and it describes the album as calm and laid back and soothing. Now, I'm assuming that reflects your personality too, Roger, like being calm and being laid back type of person?
Yeah, I'm pretty mellow, I would say. And that's the sound I like. It's almost like a smooth jazz, but not so much, because we still got some sort of Latin tunes in there. Some funkier ones, a little bit more upbeat. So it's really a collection of music that I felt good about. It's sometimes it's about the groove, right?
Right. And I guess it's a great opportunity right now to pay tribute to the other musicians that collaborated with you in your two jazz albums, because you're on guitar. You have three other musicians doing keyboards, bass, and drums, and that will be Denny, Ken, and Steve. What can you tell us about your band with those three guys and what they bring to the table?
Yeah, Ken, the bass player, I actually met when I was in university. I think I'm a year or two ahead of him. But he started out as a guitar player, and I'm glad that he changed to the bass, because if he stayed on the guitar, I think he'd be a much better guitarist than I am. And so Ken's solid that way. I've also gigged a couple of times with him as a duo and as a trio, and I felt that, just playing with him, I don't really have to worry about playing too much. Whereas with, let's say, another bass player, I might have to do a little bit more in a smaller group just to cover up the sound. So Ken's fantastic that way. Dennis and Steve I met in a big band that I play in regularly, and Steve's just solid, and Dennis is very he gets very adventurous sometimes on the piano. He would play things that you wouldn't expect him to play, and it would turn out to be amazing. So I'm happy that these guys agreed to stick with me for a little bit.
That's fantastic. And from reading a little bit of your bio, it seems that you enjoy your jazz albums a little bit more than your first album, mainly because of these three musicians, Denny, Ken, and Steve, that you work with. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, of course, definitely. Yeah. I think playing jazz, a huge part of it is the interaction between the musicians. And, those are great guys to be able to interact with during performing and during recording.
And there's also even a funny story about the recording of Georgia on My Mind. And now, if I understand correctly, someone's iPhone broke during the recording. Is that right? What happened there?
Yeah, well, during as I was saying, last summer when we gigged, I would usually do a couple of vocal tunes. So, and when we gigged, we did it more often in a trio setting. So Ken and Steve had heard me sing before, but not Dennis. Dennis, the piano player. So, when you realized that I was going to do some vocal tunes on this new record, he wanted to hear me sing. So we did a version of it. We did a run on it, practice, while, the recording engineer and drummer was sorting out some technical stuff. So he placed his iPhone on top of the piano, and I was singing, and he was playing. I guess the vibrations on the piano just kind of bounced the iPhone onto the keyboard of the piano, and the back of the phone was shattered. It's not much of a story, but it sounds impressive if you just hear me say that the phone shattered from my singing. So.
Well, I would think it would be like a funny funny story, anecdote, especially if you got it like on video or something. But it's definitely a great story. Just hearing that something amusing like that happened during the recording, of an album. So that's fantastic. And if I had my own albums, I'd probably play them in the car all the time. But what about you? What CDs do you listen to in the car or at home?
Well, nowadays I've been paying a lot of attention to some of the local musicians in Toronto, a lot of jazz vocalists, people like Michael Casehammer, Barbara Lika, some of those guys. I'm also a big fan of, George Benson. There's this smooth jazz guitarist from LA called Paul Brown that I like a lot. He's a great producer as well. Norman Brown, just all over the place, really.
That's fantastic, and Roger, you're a teacher as well. You teach music, and you have touring lessons, like private lessons, I should say. And with all of your teaching, do you get like a summer vacation from school? And if so, will you be forcing yourself to work through this break with more music writing?
Yeah, I definitely get some vacation from my teaching job during the day. But during the summer, I do teach privately, and I've got a couple of gigs coming up. I just did the CD release at the Train Studio in Toronto. I've got another one coming up, a jazz festival gig at downtown Oakville. So we'll gig a little bit. We recorded the CD release gig as well. So right now, I'm actually on my way to the recording studio just to listen to a rough mix of it and see what will come out of it. Perhaps another live album.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, it seems like you're all about music because of your albums, and you teach music to children, and you even offer private music lessons and all that, and you write songs whenever you get a chance, you do gigs. But you're not just about music, Roger, because I see you on Facebook, and you comment on sports teams in Toronto all the time, like whether it's soccer or baseball or hockey or basketball. Now, how often do you get a chance to take time out of your busy schedule and your music schedule and attend sporting events in Toronto?
Right. Well, I'm a big Blue Jays fan, and I think I'm more of a baseball guy, more so than any other sports. Soccer, a little bit, but I try to go to a Blue Jays game, every other month or so. It's definitely a great game to watch, and they've got a lot of excitement going on this year. So I'm looking forward to a great season with the Toronto Blue Jays.
I think that's one of the cool things to do in Toronto, just going to like a baseball game and catch a few innings and all that. So that's fantastic. Now, when will we see the Blue Jays win the World Series again?
Hopefully in the next. Well, Paul Beeston said in the next 5 years we'll probably make the playoffs 3 times. So hopefully as early as, if not this year, next year.
Well, Roger, I have a feeling that we'll see you come out with another album before the Blue Jays win another championship. But that's just my opinion. But anyway, it's good to talk to you, Roger. Keep it up, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you for having me again. It was nice talking to you.
That was jazz guitarist, vocalist, composer, and songwriter Roger Chong from Toronto. A pleasure to talk to him here on CJSF once again. And if you'd like to keep up with his latest happenings and his music, be sure to check him out at rogerchong.com. That's rogerchong.com, and the last name is Chong. And we'll take a short break, and we'll be back after this. Now, a couple of quick announcements. Pacific Cinematheque, a nonprofit film society and center, shows over 500 films annually, featuring new talents, international, classic, and contemporary. The organization also has a film library, a film archive, and an educational program department. Come and feel the essential cinema experience in the 194-seat theater in the heart of Vancouver's downtown. It's located at 1131 Howe Street near Davie. Again, that's 1131 Howe Street. For more information and to find out about upcoming films, visit their website at www.cinematech.bc.ca. That's CINEMATHEQUE.bc.ca. And if you enjoy poetry, check out the Lunch Poems at SFU series, which will be happening on Wednesday, June 20th at the SFU Harbor Center in downtown Vancouver. It takes place from 12 noon to 1 p.m. It's a monthly event, and again, this time it will be happening on 20th of June. That's a Wednesday. For more information about the featured poets this month, visit their Facebook page. That's Lunch Poems at SFU. Now, before the interview with Roger Chong, we played a piece from his current album, Send a Little Love. Now, he mentioned how that album is a lot different from his first album titled In the Beginning. It's a different style of music because of how he's evolved since the first album. But let's play something from that first album featuring Roger on vocals and him with the lyrics. And this song is titled Maybe.
Shy to be noticed, and how much I would give to get to know you. It may be a smile I'm attracted to, it may be your eyes I like to look into, and maybe I want to get close to you, and maybe I'm down not knowing what to do. There is a show I'd like to go, I'd love to take you there. If you don't mind me being so bold, I'd love to take you. And how much I would give to spend some time with you. It may be a smile I'm attracted